What happens when one of America's most outspoken political figures sits across from one of sports broadcasting's toughest interviewers? What starts as a calm exchange quickly spirals into a tense, explosive confrontation, ending in a walkout no one saw coming. This isn't your average interview. This is Bob Costas, the man known for asking the questions others avoid, going head-to-head with Donald Trump, a man who's never backed down from a challenge. Before we dive into this clash of wills, hit subscribe and drop a comment below, because trust me, you'll want to weigh in on this one. The studio lights blazed bright, cutting sharp shadows across the intimate set. Bob Costas sat composed, notes perfectly aligned beside him, his expression steady and focused. Across from him, Donald Trump adjusted his jacket, flashing that familiar, confident grin at the cameras. Everyone on set could feel it, the tension. This wasn't going to be another routine conversation. Costas began smoothly. You've been in the public eye for decades. Businessman, TV personality, president. How has your communication style evolved over the years? Trump leaned in, gesturing with his hands. Well, Bob, I think my communication style is why people connect with me. I tell it like it is. I don't sugarcoat things. I talk to the American people the way they talk to each other. Costas nodded slightly, but there was a flicker in his eyes. He was just warming up. That directness, he said evenly. Some might argue it crosses into something else. You've made statements that fact-checkers have challenged. Does accuracy matter as much as directness to you? Trump's smile tightened. Here we go again with the fact-checkers. Bob, these people have agendas. I tell the truth as I see it. Maybe some numbers are off, but the spirit is right. The media nitpicks every word but never gives credit when I'm right, which is most of the time. Costas didn't flinch. His tone sharpened just slightly. But we're not talking about being mostly right. We're talking about statements that have been proven false. Crowd sizes, voter fraud, crime statistics. These are verifiable facts, Trump's jaw set. You see, Bob, this is the problem. You act like you want a conversation, but you just want to play gotcha. I've achieved more than most people could dream of. I built an empire, I became president, and all you want to talk about is crowd sizes. I'm asking about a pattern, Costas countered. A pattern of statements that fit your narrative regardless of their accuracy. That's fair to ask of someone who's held, and may again seek, the highest office in the land. Trump pointed at him, voice rising. You're stuck in the old media mindset, Bob. You think you get to decide what's true. The American people are smarter than that. They know when the media's lying. They know when people like you try to twist the story. I talk to them directly, and that drives you crazy because you can't control the narrative anymore. Costas set his notes down. His eyes met Trump's. I'm not controlling any narrative. I'm establishing basic facts. For instance, you've claimed awards you never received, titles you were never given. These things are easily checked. Why say them? Because the story matters more than the tiny details, Trump shot back. When I'm speaking to thousands of people, I'm making a point. I'm connecting. You sit here dissecting every word, but that's not how real communication works. But you're not just talking to rally crowds, Costas pressed. You're shaping policy, representing the country. Don't words and facts matter there? Trump leaned forward, voice firm. Of course facts matter, but you know what else matters? Results. The economy was booming under my administration. Jobs were up. Unemployment was down, especially for minorities. We had the greatest economy in our country's history. The air in the studio was electric. Neither man blinked. And everyone watching knew it was only going to get hotter from here. That's a fact, Trump said, leaning back in his chair. But you don't want to talk about that. You want to talk about some crowd size from years ago? Actually, I do want to talk about the economy, Costas replied evenly. But when you say it was the greatest economy in the history of our country, that's another claim economists across the political spectrum have disputed. By most traditional measures, there have been several stronger periods in American history. Trump's eyes narrowed. There you go again. These economists you're quoting, they're the same people who said my policies would fail. They said the stock market would crash, that we'd fall into a recession. They were wrong about everything. And now I'm supposed to believe them when they try to downplay what we achieved? I created millions of jobs. Millions. The stock market hit record highs over and over. But you sit there quoting some professor who's never built a thing in his life. I'm citing economic data, Costas replied calmly. Historical comparisons, growth rates, unemployment figures, wage growth adjusted for inflation. These aren't opinions. They're measurements. And I'm telling you, those measurements don't capture what real people felt, Trump shot back. I talked to workers who said they finally had hope again. Small business owners who told me they could breathe for the first time in years. That's what matters. Not some chart a liberal economist cooked up to make me look bad. Costas took a quiet breath, maintaining his composure. Let's shift gears then. Your relationship with the media has been contentious for decades, especially during and after your presidency. You've called journalists enemies of the people. Don't you think that kind of rhetoric is dangerous in a democracy that depends on a free press? Trump didn't hesitate. The press isn't free when it's biased, Bob. When 90% of coverage about me is negative, that's not journalism. That's activism. And yes, I'll call that out. The American people deserve to know what they're watching isn't objective news, it's opinion dressed up as reporting. But attacking the press as a whole, calling them enemies, that's not the same as criticizing a specific story, Costas countered. Blanket condemnation undermines public trust in journalism as an institution. Maybe that institution needs to be undermined, Trump snapped. Maybe it needs to be torn down and rebuilt because it's broken. You act like the press is sacred, untouchable. I question it. I challenge it. And the American people appreciate that because they see through it too. The tension in the studio thickened. Crew members exchanged uneasy glances. Costas stayed steady, but his questions cut deeper. Let's talk about your claims regarding the last election, he said. You've maintained it was stolen, despite dozens of court cases, including some before judges you appointed, finding no evidence of widespread fraud. At what point does repeating that claim become irresponsible? Trump's expression hardened. And there it is, and the real reason you wanted me here. To push the same narrative everyone else pushes. That election was a disaster, Bob. There were irregularities everywhere. Mail-in ballots with no verification. Voting machines malfunctioning. Dead people voting. But the courts wouldn't touch it. They dismissed cases on technicalities, not the merits. Many cases were reviewed on the merits, Costas interjected. Your own attorney general said there was no evidence of fraud that would have changed the outcome. Your own cybersecurity chief called it the most secure election in American history. And they were wrong, Trump said flatly. Or maybe they were part of the problem. I'm not going to sit here while you tell me something I know isn't true. I saw what happened. Millions of Americans saw it too. We know that election was rigged. What you're describing is a feeling, not evidence, Costas said, his tone careful but firm. And when feelings replace evidence in our political system, democracy becomes fragile. Trump leaned forward sharply. Don't lecture me about democracy, Bob. I got more votes than any sitting president in history. Millions more than the first time. And you expect me to believe I lost? The numbers don't add up. Actually, they do, Costas replied, voice steady but unyielding. Your opponent received millions more votes than you did. That's how our system works. The candidate with the most electoral votes wins. And those votes were certified, recounted, audited, and verified in state after state. Trump's face flushed. He pointed toward Costas. You're doing exactly what I said you would do. The room fell silent. Cameras rolled. And everyone on set could feel it. The interview had just crossed a line it couldn't come back from. You're sitting there like you've got all the answers, Trump said, his voice hardening. Like you're the arbiter of truth. But you're not. You're just another media guy repeating the narrative you've been fed. I lived through that election, Bob. I watched the numbers in real time. I was leading, by a lot, and then suddenly, in the middle of the night, these massive ballot dumps appear. All from my opponent. And you're going to tell me that's normal? Yes, actually, Costas replied evenly. That's exactly what experts predicted would happen. Mail-in ballots, which skewed toward your opponent because you spent months telling your supporters not to use them, were counted later than in-person votes in many states. This was explained before, during, and after election night. It wasn't mysterious. It was the process, so convenient, Trump shot back, dripping with sarcasm. Everything that helped my opponent was just the process. Everything that could have helped me was irregular or not allowed. The media, the tech companies, the entire system, it was rigged. And now you expect me to pretend their concerns matter? Concerns should be based on reality, Costas said firmly. When you tell people the election was stolen without credible evidence, you're not addressing concerns. You're creating them. You're manufacturing distrust in the system itself. Trump leaned back, arms crossing. Now you're going to blame me for what other people did. Classic. I told people to peacefully make their voices heard. I can't control what every person does, but the media made me the villain anyway. You told people the election was stolen, Costas countered. You told them their country was being taken from them. That kind of message creates a sense of crisis. And when people believe their democracy is collapsing, some will take extreme action. My words were about fighting for what's right, Trump snapped. I've always said do it legally and peacefully. Always. But I also have the right to call out corruption when I see it. Of course you do, Costas said. But rights come with responsibilities. With your platform, your words shape how millions perceive reality. And when those words are built on claims that have been thoroughly debunked, that's not leadership. That's misinformation. Trump pointed at him. There's that word again, debunked. You people act like it's magic, like saying it makes everything disappear. Just because a so-called fact-checker writes an article doesn't make it true. I've spoken to people with evidence, witnesses who saw things. But none of that matters to you, because it doesn't fit your narrative. If you have evidence, the place for it is court, Costas replied calmly. That's how the system works. And it was presented in case after case, and judges, including ones you appointed, found it insufficient. Trump's voice rose. The courts are part of the establishment, Bob. They didn't want to touch it. They were afraid of how explosive it would be, so they took the easy way out. Don't act like the courts are infallible. They're not. Then who should people trust? Costas asked. If not the courts, not bipartisan election officials, not the audits, who decides the outcome of an election? People should trust their eyes, Trump said firmly. I had tens of thousands at every rally. My opponent could barely fill a gymnasium. I had enthusiasm, energy, momentum. And you want me to believe the guy hiding in his basement got more votes than me? Come on, Bob. Rally size doesn't decide elections, Costas said quietly. People vote for all kinds of reasons. Some didn't vote for your opponent. They voted against you. That's not fraud, Mr. President. That's democracy. Trump gave a dismissive wave. That's a nice theory, Bob, but I don't buy it. And neither do millions of Americans. We know what we saw. Costas adjusted in his seat, his tone shifting. Let's talk about your relationships with foreign leaders. You've been described as unusually friendly with authoritarian figures, leaders with serious human rights issues. What draws you to them? Trump shook his head. Here we go again with the propaganda. I got along with world leaders because that's what a good president does. You want me to insult them? You want me to create enemies? I built relationships other presidents couldn't even start. I opened doors. The air in the studio was thick, a mix of defiance and control, both men refusing to yield. The conversation had shifted from heated debate to something deeper, a clash over truth itself. I created opportunities for peace, Trump said, his voice steady but edged with irritation. But the media always twists it into something negative. There's a difference, Costas pressed, leaning in slightly, between maintaining diplomatic relations and publicly praising authoritarian leaders. You've called some of them strong, smart, even talented. These are people who've jailed dissidents and silenced opposition. Doesn't that send a message about what you value? What I value, Trump shot back, is results. I value leaders who get things done for their countries. I don't have to agree with everything they do to recognize strength when I see it. The world isn't black and white, Bob. These are complex relationships, and I handled them better than any president in modern history. Better than any president? Costas repeated skeptically. Many foreign policy experts would disagree. They'd point to strained alliances, broken agreements, and frayed relationships with long-standing allies. Foreign policy experts, Trump scoffed, are the same people who got us into endless wars and signed terrible trade deals that hollowed out American industry. So no, I don't lose sleep over what they think. I put America first. I made other countries pay their fair share. I stood up for American workers. That's what a real president does. Standing up for American interests doesn't mean alienating allies, Costas countered. It doesn't mean questioning defense commitments or praising adversaries while criticizing friends. My partners are the American people, Trump declared firmly. That's who I answer to, not some outdated alliance dreamed up decades ago. Everything I did was for Americans. If that made some people uncomfortable, that's their problem. Costas studied him for a moment. You keep framing it as you versus everyone, the establishment, the media, the experts. But at what point does that become less about fighting for the people and more about refusing to accept criticism or accountability? Trump's jaw tightened. Now you're playing psychologist. When you can't attack my record or deny my accomplishments, you go after me personally. You try to make it about ego, but people see through that, Bob. I'm not attacking you personally, Costas said evenly. I'm talking about a pattern. You've fired those who disagreed with you, attacked members of your own party for disloyalty, and lashed out at critics. Is that really healthy leadership? It's called having standards, Trump snapped. If someone works for me and undermines what we're doing, of course they're gone. That's not ego. That's leadership. But loyalty to you and loyalty to the country aren't always the same thing, Costas replied. When you demand personal loyalty above all else, people start questioning your priorities. I've never asked anyone to betray the country, Trump insisted. That's absurd. What I expect is loyalty to the mission the American people elected me to carry out. If someone can't support that, they don't belong in my administration. It's that simple. Several of your former officials have said you asked them to do things that were inappropriate, or even illegal, Costas pressed. Your former chief of staff, your defense secretary, people who worked closely with you, have raised serious concerns about your fitness for office. Are all of them lying? They're disgruntled, Trump said flatly. They got fired or they quit because they couldn't handle the pressure. Then they run to the media to rehabilitate their reputations by attacking me. It's pathetic. They all praised me when they were in the job, but the minute they're out, suddenly I'm the worst person in the world. That's a lot of people to write off as bitter, Costas observed. When this many insiders are saying similar things, doesn't that call for some self-reflection? Self-reflection? Trump repeated, almost laughing. You want me to sit around second-guessing myself because a few weak people couldn't keep up? I know what I accomplished. I don't need validation from failures. The tension in the studio was palpable now. Trump leaned forward, hands slicing the air with sharp gestures. Let's talk about your business record, Costas said, pivoting. You've been involved in thousands of lawsuits. Several of your companies have declared bankruptcy. How do you square that with your image as a successful businessman? Trump's eyes narrowed. I built a multi-billion-dollar empire, he said, his voice rising. I have properties all over the world. Bankruptcy is a legal tool. Smart business people use it, Trump said, his tone defensive but practiced. I never went personally bankrupt. Some of my companies restructured debt. That's called strategy. But what about the contractors who say you refuse to pay them? Costas pressed. Small business owners who claim you drove them into financial ruin? Those stories are exaggerated or flat-out false, Trump shot back. In construction, there are always disputes. Sometimes the work isn't done right. I'm not going to pay full price for a bad job. Your university settled a fraud case for $25 million, Costas continued. We settled to avoid wasting years in court, Trump said, voice rising. It was a business decision, but all anyone remembers is the number. Nobody talks about the fact that we could have won if we'd fought it. You appointed family members to senior positions despite their lack of experience, Costas said evenly. You held official meetings at properties you own. Don't those raise conflict of interest concerns? My family members were qualified, and they worked for free, Trump snapped. And I'm allowed to own businesses. Presidents throughout history have had business interests. But when it's me, suddenly it's a scandal. When foreign officials stay at your hotels, That's money going into your pocket while you're making decisions that affect them, Costas countered. I didn't make decisions based on who stayed at my hotels, Trump said sharply. That's insane. Every decision I made was for the good of America, period. You've made comments that seem to encourage violence toward protesters, even journalists, Costas said gravely. How do you defend that rhetoric? I was talking about self-defense, Trump insisted. People show up at rallies just to cause trouble. The media twists my words to make me look bad. When you tell thousands of people you'd like to punch someone in the face, that's not self-defense, Costas said. I'm a counterpuncher, Trump replied, his voice hardening. If people attack me, I hit back twice as hard. That's strength. People respect that. You have to be tough in this world. When reporters are attacked at your rallies, when people cite your words as justification, don't you feel any responsibility? I've always condemned violence, Trump said flatly. But I can't control what millions of supporters do. If one person acts out, that's on them, not me. Even members of your own party have struggled to defend your statements, Costas noted. Many Republicans have privately expressed concern. Doesn't that tell you something? It tells me they're weak, Trump said bluntly. The Republican Party was dying before I came along. I brought energy, voters wins. If some can't handle that, it's their problem. You've undermined faith in elections and institutions and truth itself, Costas said. That's not strength. That's destabilizing democracy. The system was already broken, Trump retorted. I just had the guts to say it out loud. The elites hated that because they liked the system the way it was. By telling people not to trust anyone but you, Costas said, you're consolidating power around yourself. That's dishonest, Trump snapped, face reddening. I tell people to think for themselves, not to trust a corrupt media. You're acting like I'm some kind of cult leader. I'm giving people information. Information that often turns out to be false, Costas reminded him. Trump slammed his hand against the armrest. Everything I say you call false. Maybe it's just that I'm right, and you can't stand it. This is about accountability, Costas said calmly. Whether someone who's led the country can be honest about their record, acknowledge mistakes, accept that their version of events isn't always the truth. I've been more honest than any politician in modern history, Trump fired back. I speak from the heart. That's real honesty. Honesty is about facts, Costas said quietly. And by that standard, your record is deeply problematic. According to who? Trump demanded. The so-called fact-checkers who hate me? The media desperate to destroy me? They're biased. Part of the system I've been fighting all along. So everyone who disagrees with you is biased, Costas summarized. Everyone who holds you accountable is part of a conspiracy. Doesn't that make real accountability impossible? It makes it impossible with people who aren't acting in good faith, Trump shot back. You didn't come here to talk. You came here to attack. This isn't an interview. It's an interrogation. And I'm done. Trump reached for his microphone. We're not finished, Costas said firmly. You agreed to this interview. I agreed to an interview, not an ambush, Trump replied, standing. You've asked the same questions 10 different ways and ignored everything positive. This is exactly why people don't trust the media anymore. If you walk out, you're proving your critics right, Costas warned. That you can't handle scrutiny, Trump ripped off his mic. Think whatever you want, Bob. I don't have to sit here and be lectured by someone who's never accomplished a fraction of what I have. You want to judge me? Go ahead. I'm done. So that's it? Costas asked, remaining seated. You're walking out? That's it, Trump said, tossing the mic onto the chair. I've got better things to do than waste my time with someone who's already made up his mind. The room was silent as Trump strode toward the exit. Crew members froze, cameras still rolling. For the record, Costas called after him, I asked tough questions. That's not bias. That's journalism. Trump turned briefly at the door. No, Bob, journalism is reporting facts objectively. What you do is activism dressed up as journalism. Big difference. He walked out. The camera lingered on the empty chair. Costas looked into the lens. Well, he said quietly. That's how that conversation ended. Tough questions, no easy answers, and a dramatic walkout. What do you think? Should I have handled it differently Or was he just unwilling to face criticism? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe. That's what real conversation looks like, even when one side walks away.